We are here in beautiful Johns Island, the home and garden of the legendary Nancy Hart, founder and former owner of Church Creek Nursery. Nancy has taught many workshops for us, has been a longtime volunteer and member. She is very dear to all of us, and she's got lots of fabulous knowledge about tropical plants, and that is what we're going to talk about today. Keep in mind, after we are done, we will have a recording of this, and we will send you a link to that by the end of the week so you can access it whenever you would like. So without further ado, I welcome Nancy Hart.
Good morning. Welcome, as Kyle said, to my tropical garden here on Johns Island. This is not my first workshop on tropicals, but it is the first one I've ever done on Zoom. So bear with me. I have to remember to look at the camera, which is hard to do. But anyway, so tropicals, here we are. I have a passion for tropicals. That started long ago when I lived in a cold climate and I had houseplants. And then I moved here where it was warmer and I started trialing them and experimenting with them outside, because at the time my then husband and I had a landscape design build firm, and we traveled to Florida regularly to get plants for those jobs. And of course I saw a lot of tropicals growing down there that I thought might work up here, and I tried them, and a lot of them certainly did. And why do I love tropicals so much? Well, I love them because of the variety. There's a variety of textures. There's feathery textures, there's round textures, there's all kinds of textures and colors. There are all sorts of colors. And flowers, there's a variety in flowers, like these. Okay, these are gingers. Gingers happens to be one of my first loves. There are 39 types of ginger, I think that's right, growing in my garden. And here's some of the flowers from the gingers. This is my favorite butterfly ginger. This is the Kahili ginger. And as you can see, it's huge flower. See, it's as big as my head. And the hummingbirds love this, and it's very fragrant too. And there are lots of different colors in butterfly gingers. Hedychium is the Latin name for them. They're oranges, and they're creams with gold throats, and there are white ones, and there are pink ones, and there are orange ones. And then you get different varieties of ginger. You get, for instance, the edible ginger family, the Alpinia. And that's the flower of the Alpinia. It's gorgeous. It only blooms on old growth, last year's growth. Then you have Costus, which is a really strange little bloom. Actually, this is the flower itself. These are bracts. The flower itself is right there. And here's another Costus flower. This is crepe ginger, or spiral ginger. You can see why it's called crepe ginger, because the flowers have the texture of crepe. And it gets very tall, like 7 feet tall. And here's another ginger, which we'll be dealing with later. This is another Costus. This is variegated spiral ginger, which is favorite. And that was gifted to me by a dear friend of ours, Sally. And here we have curcumas. There are lots of curcumas too. These are, we have the Siam tulip, the curcuma alyssomatifolia. We have the curcuma petiolata, hidden gingers. We have the curcuma longa, or domestica. This is the one from which turmeric is made. And a little bit later on, I'm going to show you the turmeric, the root of this, and you can tell that it's going to be turmeric because of the color. Then we have glabas. We have dancing ladies, they're called. We have the glaba globulifera, which is kind of round, but it still has the little dancing lady outside, the true flower. Again, these are the bracts. This is the true flower. There's another one. Here's another. This is a new acquisition for me. This is a white Lana dancing lady. and it's really beautiful. And these curcumas in particular are wonderful cut flowers. They will last, at least a week if you pick them fresh in the house, maybe even longer. The Siam tulip lasts a lot longer than a week. It's good for at least 2 weeks. So are the guavas. The hedychiums aren't so great. They're a couple of days for a cut flower, but the fragrance that they bring into the house is so wonderful. It's worth it. And last but and least, here is the curcuma flaviflora. And this blooms, it's a pretty bloom, this red bloom with the yellow, actually red bract with the yellow flower, but it blooms right at the base of the plant. So unless you have it in an elevated planter, it's not real visible. But not only is there a wide variety in the ginger look, there's a wide variety and tropical look. There's a wide variety in cultural conditions. You can find a tropical to grow in any condition that you have. Sun, shade, wet, dry, rocky soil, although we don't have much of that around here. Bogs, we do have bogs. Anywhere. The only thing about tropicals is they can't have freezing weather, even though that is debatable, because as so many of you remember the freeze of January 2018, we had 5 days of weather that never rose above freezing. Now, I've been gardening in this garden itself for 26 years, and I've never seen cold like that. So you can imagine, and there was 7 inches of snow here to boot. So you can imagine, I thought, oh my gosh, what all have I lost? Oh, and it looks so pitiful in the spring. You know, a lot of things were brown at the top. I mean, I think we hauled like 5 or 6 truckloads of cut back brown foliage out of here that spring when we were cleaning up. But you know what? As we cut back the foliage, boom, there was new growth coming up. I did not lose a single plant in this garden, not one. Not my bat flower, not my alpinias, not my bananas. All that really tender stuff you would think you would lose. No, the only plant I lost was half a hedge of rosemary. Rosemary, can you believe that? I mean, isn't that ironic? That's supposedly hardy way up north, but nope, lost that. Tropical survived. So I have, like I mentioned before, I'm a collector. This is a collector's garden. It's not exactly, there's a basic design to the garden with the layout of the paths and whatnot and the water feature. But all the plants, I mean, I'm a collector. I buy a plant, I propagate a plant, I find a plant, and then I find a place to put it. I don't design where to put the plant first and then find a plant to fit it. I find a plant first, then find a place to fit it. So this is a collector's garden. And as I mentioned, I have 39 varieties of ginger. I have 8 different types of cycads. Now, cycads are a prehistoric family. The sago is probably the best known of the cycads. But I have 7 other types of cycads. I have Kunti palms, which look like ferns almost, except they're leathery. I have diunes. You can see that is a diune edule. That comes from Mexico. That's a cycad. Right next to it, which you can't see, is a diune horrida, which makes a Chinese holly look smooth, like child's play. It's so thorny. And palms, I have 12 varieties of palms. Well, 11 varieties of hardy palms. We have the sable palms, we have the Washingtonias, we have the Pindo palm. Over here we have the windmill palm. I have, like I said, I have 11 varieties of hardy palms and 1 not so hardy, and that's a queen palm. It's right behind the windmill palm. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not. And it's not hardy. I bought that as a specimen for my son's wedding when I had it out here. I had a pair of them, and I planted it in the ground, and that was in 2014, and I lost it that first winter. It was a pretty cold winter, so I had a backup. So I put this one in, and it's been there ever since. I do wrap it. If we have another really cold winter, I'm afraid, that it might go, because it's not hardy for us at all. But it's so beautiful that I couldn't resist putting it in the garden. Now, as most gardeners, I have made my mistakes in this garden in plants. One of my worst mistakes is chameleon plant, Houttenia. Oh my gosh, I am still battling that plant. I put in one gallon pot 26 years ago when I planted this garden, and I'm still battling it. It's shown up all over the garden. So do not buy that plant unless you have a large, huge area in which to put it, because it will take over. And not only is it impervious to any sort of weed killer, herbicide, the roots are that deep, and it spreads by underground runners. So, unless you're going to dig up and excavate the whole garden, it's there to stay. The other mistake that I've made, which is prettier, but it is a mistake nonetheless, is the pagoda flower, the Clerodendron paniculata. And it has a pyramidal shaped big orange bloom. It blooms in late summer. It's beautiful. It's woody, but it too spreads by underground runners, and it comes up everywhere. So, that's another mistake. But, we as gardeners, we live with those because they happen. So, in addition to the gingers and the palms and the cycads, I have a lot of other tropical plants, agapanthus, brugmansia. I even have a bird of paradise, which I'm hoping will bloom this year after 2 winters of warm weather. I have all kinds of things. And you might wonder, what do I do when winter does come? Do I do any sort of preparation? No, I don't, except for that one palm, which I wrap. I mulch my garden in the spring, so I don't remulch it in the winter. The only other thing I do is when the frost kills herbaceous perennial, which many of the tropicals are here, like Aliphaneers and whatnot. Not the last 2 winters, but normally. I cut them back at that point. Not until they're completely dead above ground. And that's true for even your hardier things like lantana. Don't cut it until the frost, if there is one, has killed it right to the ground, because if you cut it and the stems are still green, it's going to leave that stem open to the elements. And if it rains and the water gets in the stem and it freezes, then there's going to be more damage. So if you can bear up with all the brown, just leave it as long as you can. I do take a couple of things in, actually, besides covering that palm. I take my key lime in, my Meyer lemon, and my sandpaper vine. I take all 3 of those. My sandpaper vine actually is hardy in the garden. Petrea is the name of it, or Queen's Wreath. It has this beautiful sky blue flower in the early spring. It blooms on old growth. It's sort of like a banana. It blooms on old growth, so if it's killed back in the garden in the winter, it won't bloom. And speaking of bananas, did you know that the banana stalk is really a leaf? And when the banana comes out, you've noticed how it unfurls from the top? That's because it's a leaf. And if you want bloom, you've got to protect that stem during the winter, because it too blooms on old growth. So that has not been an issue the last 2 years, but if it ever is again, I used to know a nurseryman who would wrap his banana stems in newspaper and then burlap, and he would have bananas every year, every year. I don't have quite that much patience, so I just let mine do their thing. And I've had pretty good luck. We had 5 bunches of bananas last year, edible and small, seedless. It's called Raha Puri. It's one of my favorite varieties. It has a very wide blue-green leaf, and it is pretty hardy. And this year, so far, we only have one. I think that's because so many of the plants bloomed last year, and once they bloom, you've got to cut them to the ground because it'll never bloom from that particular stock again. It'll send up shoots, and the new shoots will bloom once they're old enough, but not the same plant. So, biggest concern for tropicals in the winter, if they do go dormant, is root rot. And there's not much we can do about the weather, but you can cut back your irrigation to probably none. I don't think I irrigate in the winter at all unless we have, I don't think I do at all, because we normally get a lot of rain. And if gingers in particular, elephant ears or another, sensitive to the wet when they're dormant, they will rot. So how do you get more plants if you've got tropicals, besides going to the store and buying them? Well, you can propagate them. And there are several ways you can propagate perennials. Just like anything else, you can do seeds. Now I want to talk to you a minute about seeds. All right, I don't know if we can see those, but you'll see there's some red seeds, which is coral bean, erythrina. And then there's some purple seeds, which are beautyberry, which is a native. It's not really a tropical, but it was what I could find this year to demonstrate what I'm about to show you. So the coral bean is a hard surface seed. So you want to do what's called scarifying that seed. Some people use like a nail file and they just scratch the coating. I like to use cuticle scissors. And what you do is you take your cuticle scissors and you just barely nip through that outside coating. You want to be careful not to get the embryo inside. You just want to nip through that outside coating. And then with seeds like this that are hard surfaces, you want to soak them. In fact, a whole lot of tropical seeds you want to soak overnight if they're hard, like hibiscus, for instance. Hibiscus is a tiny hard seed, but it's really too small to scarify. So you soak it in hot water. Now it has to be hot water, 150 degrees minimum. Well, no, you wouldn't want boiling water, but 150 degrees, let's just say 150 degrees. And you want to soak it for 24 hours. And after that period of time, some of the seeds will float and some of them will sink. And allegedly, the ones that float are the ones that are good. The ones that sink are not so good and will not germinate. And you can do that with asparagus fern. I picked an asparagus fern seed, but it was not ripe. And if a seed's not ripe, it's just goopy inside. So I did find a beautyberry, which has flesh. That's what I'm trying to show you. A seed that's fleshy on the outside. And now my fingers are slimy and I don't know if I can pick it up. Slimy on the outside, but it has the little hard seeds, which I'm sure you can't see in here. Little tiny seeds, little tiny seeds. Okay, and they're hard, so you want to soak them. But anyway, my point is, if you've got a seed that's fleshy, go ahead and just work that flesh off, and then lay the seeds out on, I use paper plates. Let them sit out in paper plates in the kitchen, which you should see my kitchen sometimes. It's pretty funny. Paper plates everywhere. And don't forget to write the name of the seed on the plate, because you will forget. And that's just not my age talking. I even did that when I was younger. So there you go. You got your seeds. Let's pretend that you're ready to plant them. So what do you plant them in? Well, I like a seeding mix that is very fine. It has vermiculite, perlite, ground up peat moss, no bark at all. It's just very, very fine. And I use this, I'll use it for rooting cuttings as well as seed. But you can root cuttings in something that's a little coarser. Like this is a big box store brand of seeding soil. And you can see how much coarser it is, how much bigger the particles are than in the other type. And you can use that for rooting your cuttings. Now, cuttings. Let's talk about cuttings. Oh, the irrigation came on. We're going to get wet. Where's Joe? Let's talk about rooting cuttings. All right. You can root cuttings of anything that is a little woody. Like you can root cuttings of hibiscus. You can root cuttings of just about anything, any kind of shrub, anything like that, you can root cuttings. And gingers you can't root from cuttings except for the costus family. The costus family, you can root cuttings. What you want to do, I took this cutting earlier. You want to cut off some of the leaves because you want the energy to go into making roots. You don't want it to go into growing leaves. So you make your cutting. You want to stick it. It's very flexible right here. It's very hard right here. Somewhere in between, you want to make your cutting. You cut it at an angle, and I use rooting hormone. I usually use hormone number 2, which is 2% IDA. This is only 1%, but it'll work. The 1%, the weaker one, will work for soft cuttings like this is. This just came from, I think I got it from Lowe's, and it's adequate. I'm sure a lot of the independent garden centers will have the hormone or the root tone in stronger amounts, but this will work for this. So all you do is you take your cutting. You have a prepared pot, and I'm using the coarser in this. Now what you want to do, and this is really important with any cutting, but particularly one that's soft, you make your hole first, okay? And then you put your cutting inside the hole, and then you pat around it, and then you mark it, and there you go. Now, the reason that you make a hole first is because if you just jam it in there, you can bruise the cutting, and if it's damaged like that, it won't put out roots. So, costus we can root from cuttings, but that's it for the gingers. The rest of the gingers are by division, and I'm going to show you in a minute. Let's go on to continue to talk about cuttings first, because when I show you division, it's going to make a real big mess. So, other cuttings you can, excuse me. Oh, I forgot to show you. So, the coral bean seed, that was the red one that I scarified with the clippers and stuck. I did this, stuck these on August 3rd, and you can see I'm already getting germination on them, which is always really exciting. That's one of my favorite things to do. You take this little seed and you plant it in the ground, stick it in the soil, and before you know it, up comes a baby. I love it. Okay, so that is that. And then I want to show you about cutting a normal kind of plant. And if you excuse me, I'm going to run back here and get a cutting because I forgot to get it earlier. Here I go. And here I come. So this is a princess flower, Tibicina, easily rooted from cuttings. And I took this great big stem because I wanted to show you how it feels when it's ripe for cuttings. All right, I'm going to take this off. Once again, we take the leaves off. Now, down here, it's very stiff. If I were to, it snaps when you break it. Up here, it's too soft. You see, it won't break at all. But right here, in the middle, it'll bend, but it doesn't break. That's where you want to make your cutting because that will root. So here again, I'm taking the flowers off because where do we want our energy to go? We want it to go into rooting. And I'm going to trim back these leaves. I could take them all the way off, but I'm just going to trim them back. We use our rooting powder and we stick it. I thought I had another thing. Oh well, anyway, and oops, see what I almost did? I almost forgot to make my hole. So you make your hole, and you put it in, and you write on there what it is and when you took the cutting. There you go. And then once you get these cuttings stuck, put them in the shade. Don't let them be in the sun at all because they don't have any roots to take up the water that they lose through their leaves. So you always want to keep your cuttings in the shade until they root. It can be bright shade, but you know, I usually put mine like under the bench or the back end of my little tiny greenhouse is shaded, so I'll put them back there. I don't have any big greenhouses anymore, but I used to do the same thing in the big houses. They would be, the propagation house was shaded. Okay, so that's cuttings, that's seed. What else do we need to do? Okay, oh, this is division. Let's do division. Now, almost all perennials can be propagated by division. Any perennial, anything that's got multiple stems where it comes out of the ground can be divided. Of course, you couldn't divide like a single stem fern, for instance. Say it only had one cluster. You couldn't do that. But anything else can be divided. The gingers are all divided by, propagated by division. The cooney palms, the agapanthus, even the tractor seat plant, the farfugium, can be propagated by division. Leaf cuttings. Oh wait, I forgot about leaf cuttings. So if you have something like a mother-in-law's tongue, Sansevieria, okay, and some begonias are the same. You can propagate this with leaf cuttings. So to do that, you just cut across the bottom and always make sure, you can get cuttings, you could go all the way down, but you want to make sure that up is up. So I put a little notch in the top of the leaf so I'll know which way's up. I could do that for myself sometimes, some days. All right, and it's basically the same thing. You stick it in the powder. And, oh, where's my notch? Oh, there it is. And then you stick it in a pot. And I don't seem, oh, wait, there's a pot. Aha. Okay. Then you put it in the pot. Ha ha ha. Don't forget to make your hole. Put it in the pot, especially this, because it's really soft. And it doesn't have to be real deep. And you can put multiple ones in the same pot. It takes it a while to grow from a leaf cutting. You'll find that it takes it actually a lot longer to grow from a leaf cutting than a stem cutting. But some things can only be propagated that way, although the mother-in-law's tongue and other sansevieria can be divided as well. But you get a lot more plants. Like we all need more plants, right? You can get, all your friends will love you. You keep bringing them plants if you do multiple cuttings. All right, division. All right, finally, we're going to get to division. I'm going to show you how to divide a ginger, which I did dig this earlier. And you can see, did you know that really this that we call a tuber or a root on the ginger is not really a tuber or a root at all. It's the stem. I just learned that recently. I always called it a rhizome, but it's a stem and it grows along under the ground. And so here's one that I've dug, took a clump, and I'm going to divide it. Do I need to hold it up? Dan? Oh, okay. I'm going to take this knife and I'm going to cut. I can pull this one. I don't even need the knife. I can pull it apart. Voila, 2 plants. Now, I want to show you something interesting about this. Remember I mentioned the turmeric? You know that you all know the spice, turmeric. Well, this is the ginger that it's derived from. I'm just going to cut off a piece of the root. Show you. You see that? Bright yellow. That is how you get turmeric. And there's a process. You peel the root, and you dry it, and then you grind it up, and you get turmeric. I've never done that. Someday I'll try it. But turmeric. So we have it divided. So then we get a pot. And I'm really going to make a mess here. But what else is new with gardening? So, and I know that you all know how to pot a pot. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. But you have a pot big enough to contain the roots. It's too bad this table has holes in it. To contain the roots, you put it in, and I take a little bit of Osmocote 14, 14, 14, which I forgot to bring. But you sprinkle, probably in this size pot, about a heaping teaspoon into the soil at the bottom, and then you stir it up a little bit. Then, of course, you just pot your plant, and I threw all the soil away, so I don't have any more soil to put in here. But you fill it up. You can see where it goes from green to white on the stem. That's how it should be. All the white part should be covered up. Yeah, that should be that deep again. And then you have it. You have a new plant. And this is curcuma. Used to be called domestica, but you know how they like to change names. And now it's called longa, curcuma longa, your turmeric. Okay. Now, this is going to go, oh, here's the flower. to that, the longa. It's white. This one's a little worse for the wear because I dug it and let it sit out overnight. But it has a white, big white curcuma flower. Okay, now, house plants, right? Oh, wait, no, I forgot. We're talking about increasing our collection of plants, right? So, grocery store plants, yeah? All right, pineapples, okay? I wish that I could have brought my pineapple over here to show you my pineapple plant. It's in the greenhouse. No, it's out behind the greenhouse now, but it's too big and I couldn't ask Joe to tote that thing way over here. It has a pineapple about this big on it. It's not ripe yet, so I didn't want to pick it. But I grew it from a cutting from a grocery store pineapple. All right, you cut off the bottom of your pineapple, and then you cut all the excess flesh off of it. All right, and as you do, you'll see little dried up looking roots in there. So you just take that and you stick it not in water. I mean, this isn't really pretty foliage, but that really won't affect how it grows, but it might affect where you want to keep it. If it had really pretty foliage, you just put it in your kitchen somewhere because it was pretty. It doesn't need to be in water. In fact, it doesn't want to be in water. And you just leave it to sit until all these bottom leaves get really, really dry, and you can easily just peel them off. And the little roots, there's a little root right there. The little roots will be exposed. Once you do that, you plant it, put it in a sunny location, and away you go. And actually, I have two pineapples in this garden. One of them is a regular grocery store pineapple, and it was transplanted with a bloom on it. I mean, a fruit transplanted with pineapple on it. And about 2 weeks later, the pineapple was gone. I think Mr. Raccoon enjoyed a pineapple feast, and it was gone. And the other one I have is a variegated pineapple, and it's been here for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And it bloomed one time so far. It's sent up lots of new babies, but no more pineapples yet. I'm waiting. It's not edible though. It's an ornamental. Okay, and so that's one plant you can get from the grocery store. Another plant you can grow from the grocery store is ginger. Okay, so when you go to get your ginger root that you eat, and this is Alpinia officinalis, no, Alpinia zarumba, I think is what it's the name of the grocery store ginger is. But when you go to look for a ginger root to plant, you want to look for ones with these little buds that look fresh. Okay, see, this one's got 2 buds. This one has no buds, so I'll save it to eat. I'll plant this part. Okay, the more little buds it has on it, the more shoots you're going to get. To plant it is really simple. Regular potting soil. You just dig out a little bit. I don't put any fertilizer in it at this point because it has no roots. I will put Osmocote on it once it starts sending up leaves. And you put it in and you plant it you put about an inch, half inch to an inch of soil over it. Tap it down, mark it, put it in a sunny spot, and you'll soon have an edible ginger. And you can either keep it inside for the winter, or you can plant it in the garden. I have 2 grocery store gingers in this garden, and one of them's gotten big enough I hope I can harvest. Of course, all of the ginger roots are edible, but it's a matter of how gingery they are. And the hedychiums are very mild. flavored ginger. The curcumas are a little bit more gingery. In fact, I like to take my curcuma rhizomes, clean them, put them in the refrigerator in Harvey's Bristol Cream Sherry, and leave them in the refrigerator soaking in that. And then as I need to use ginger, I'll pull it out and use it. And it has a nice little flavor to it. Okay, so, all right, houseplants. How can we restore houseplants? This is a little plant, which I like. I think that's the name of it. I can't be sure because I got it at a big box store and it did not have a label on it. And I haven't, at one time I figured out what it was, but I didn't write it down and I forgot. But anyway, that doesn't matter. You don't need to know the names of plants to enjoy them, do you? So you see it's gotten all leggy and all over the place. And I want it to be nice and bushy. So out come the clippers. I will clip this low here. Then I'll clip this again low here. And they probably will sprout. You see how this one, I did that last year? And see how it sprouted from the little cane? So these will sprout too. And I'm gonna take these, I'm gonna remove the excess leaves. And this one's awkward because it's growing sideways, but there again, here is the point that I think will root. I'm going to cut it, stick it in my hormone, and I'm going to make a little place for it in here because I'm going to root it right in here because what I'm aiming for is to get one bushy plant. And if I were to, I'm not trying to get more plants. If I were to put it in a different pot to root, then I'd have to take the whole thing and transplant it to get it bushy like I want to see it. This one's odd. It's just a cane that sprouted too. So I'm going to cut it with a little bit cane on both sides. Dip the whole thing in the hormone. And I think I'm going to put it on this side. So make my hole, press it in, cover it up. Then of course, you know, anytime you do stick cuttings, you water them immediately, you know, and it's the same way if you're doing seed. The soil for your, I forgot to tell you this, the soil for your cuttings and for your seeds should be damp, you know, when you put it in the pot. Not soaking wet, but just damp. Once you get it in the pot, you get your cuttings stuck or whatever, then you water it again. If you get your seeds planted, you water it again one more time, and then you just wait, you know, until it shows some sign of growth. Or if it looks like it's starting to dry out real bad, do it. I mean, you want to keep it moist is the goal, evenly moist. You don't want to go from bone dry, growing away from the side of the pot, to soaking wet, soppy. You just want to try to keep it evenly moist. But see, now I have a pretty little houseplant. It's not a little thing going all over the place. All right, and you can even take ones that are. This is a interestingly enough. This is a corn plant, a Dracaena, that last year, I don't know if any of you were at my workshop last year, but I took this plant and cut it off and stuck the cuttings, and this is what I got. This was just a bare cane, and it rooted. I mean, it sent out, didn't root, it rooted at the bottom too, but it also sprouted up here at the top. And this is what it looked like, and it's kind of a staircase thing, which I don't think is very attractive. So I am going to take this and I'm going to put it in here, and I have a really big poker for this to poke my hole, poke it in, There again, we're going to do the root cone. Stick it in there. Pat it down. I would water it in. Whoops. And see, it's going to be more, oops, it's going to be fuller at the bottom and more attractive. You know, and actually I don't have my big loppers right now, but I might cut this stem right about here, kind of in between the two levels, so it'll sprout out here and go all the way up. Okay. So I think I've covered just about everything. I hope you have some questions for me.
We do.
Rack my brain, and I will try my best to answer them.
We've had several people submit some questions,
Okay.
Nancy, so I'm just going to go through them one by one. What was the name of the first invasive you were talking about at the very beginning?
Houtinia. Houtinia. Houttinia. And the common name is chameleon plant. Here, if you want to write that down for somebody, if you can read that. Houtinia.
Houtinia.
It's a little, I'll show you one. You want me to run get one?
Do you have one nearby?
I do. Are you
Of
kidding?
course you do.
Of course I do. They're everywhere.
Hold tight, everybody. We've got about 8 or 9 questions, and we will get to them pretty quickly as soon as Nancy gets back from her adventure. Here she comes.
Okay, here it is. See, it's just an innocuous looking little green plant. This one was in the real dark shade. If it's in the sun, it gets kind of rainbow colors, and why they call it chameleon. And it's pretty, and I can't stand the way it's. I wish y'all could smell it.
We'll try it later.
It actually smells like cilantro that's been left in too long. I don't know. Anyway.
Can you explain how you take out the small seedlings from the black seedling tray?
Oh, sure. Well, the trick is they have to be rooted or you can't do it. But you see there are little holes in the bottom of the seeding tray. And let's see, I don't think this is going to have enough roots. But you take your finger or something round and you just poke it up from the bottom. And then you can reach over and pull it out. If it has enough roots. That one doesn't.
All right. What is the name of the ginger that can be propagated by cutting spelling?
Costus. Costus.
Costus.
Costus. Mm-hmm. Spiral ginger is a common name for it.
Spiral ginger.
Mm-hmm.
How do you divide a large staghorn fern? Can you?
Yes, you can. All right, so the staghorn, I don't know if you all are familiar with it. I have a small one. I have a large one, but they're way over on the
I
other
saw them,
side.
yeah.
Okay, so the staghorn has kind of a flat leaf that attaches to, in my case, it's a wire hanging basket. And then the staghorn looking leaves come out from that. So you can just cut, you take a knife, pretend this is the round leaf, and you take the knife and you go and you cut all the way around it, and you come out hopefully with a chunk of root on the bottom. And then you take, you can either set it on top of a plant of a soil which needs to have a lot of peat in it, not much any mineral to it, or you can pin it to the side of a wire basket. And actually, those plants are epiphytic. They grow. They don't need soil to grow. So you can stick it on the side of a tree. Would work.
This question you were talking a little bit about when you did the new cuttings and putting them in the shade.
Mm-hmm.
Do all those new plantings need to be watered immediately, or how frequently?
Yeah, start with the damp soil. Put the cutting in. Water it right then. Well, not soggy, but water it. that settles the soil around the cutting because you don't want air spaces around the cutting because the little new roots won't traverse the air spaces. And then just keep it evenly moist. You know, just look at it, and when if it starts to, the soil starts to get light brown on the top, water it. You really don't want it to, you know, we're talking subtleties here, you know, just barely. You want it to feel moist when you touch it.
What and when is the best time to plant gingers, fall and or spring?
Really, spring is the best time to plant a tropical because it has time to get established before any winter. Even though we haven't had winters, you could take a chance if you had a lot of them. If it was a new ginger, I would wait until the soil temperature was 50 degrees or more.
When you were doing the plant roots and the root hormone, is there any concern about putting different species of plant roots in the same bottle of root hormone? Is there any chance of contamination?
You know, probably if you were going to do a lot of them, different kinds of plants, like in the nursery, I would have little separate little bowls and do like all the salvias in this one, and you know, all the camellia in that one, etc. But the home gardener, I don't think so. But you know, err on the side of caution.
You've been doing this a long time. You haven't had any problem with it, right?
Not that I know of.
Is there any advantage to using clay pots over plastic pots?
I love clay pots, the small ones, because they breathe, you know. But you get any size on them, and then that's when they lose their charm because they're so heavy to move around.
2 more questions. Do you grow any orchids outside?
No.
There's 3 questions, I'm sorry.
No, only the closest thing I grow to an orchid is a blatilla, which is called the poor man's orchid.